another agent.
Yep.
If you show up late.
Start with that.
All right, quickly go around. Kevin Long, been here, hometown, 10 years now, which is crazy to think about. One of the junior partners. I started off working a ton of buyers, just across, that's kind of what I've always done. Kind of morphed a little bit more into the seller side now, about half and half. So still very involved with buyers, also involved with sellers. But kind of today, it's goal to kind of talk about really what questions y'all have on the buyer side of things, how to navigate the market. And then obviously this is Mr. Adrian Spears.
Nice to meet everybody. I haven't met yet. I'm looking forward to talking to everybody today. I've been in real estate and with Hometown for just over 20 years now. Been working with Dean Cheatham the entire time on his team, and started out as his buyer's agent, and since branched out a little bit, but still majority of my business is still with buyers right now. So I had the pleasure of learning quite a few different markets so far, and all the nice areas of Central Virginia and slightly beyond, and all the price points involved with many as well. So I think that's one thing we're going to touch on today is the market is changing. You know, it's don't assume something, don't assume the news, don't assume whatever you're seeing in your small world. Always connect with other hometown agents like we have. Ever since we first got in the business, we're always bouncing stuff off of one another, trying to learn and stay on our toes as much as possible.
And a lot of that comes from doing things like this, and also just talking to other agents in your office. I think it's always good to partner up with some experienced people to try to pick their brains. We do have a fairly open doors policy here at Hometown, so if you got any questions, doors are pretty much always open. It's good to reach out and get some of those questions answered to make sure, one, you're selling houses, but two, make sure your clients are taken care of as well. So, kind of just starting off here today, we don't really have a true itinerary game plan as far as questions you guys have. What are you seeing out there? What are you having questions with, concerns with, issues? Kind of open forum here. We can sit here and talk the entire time, or you guys can ask some good questions. So, got any questions? Good questions? Eric.
In regards to like a market like this right now, where there's not much for sale, and you're working with buyers and there's just nothing coming up, do you guys often, I know Mike talks about a lot, like rifle shooting and finding the house that they want and just trying to convince the people living there to sell? Do you ever go about it that way?
Yeah, I've definitely done things like that in the past where it's, hey, what neighborhood do you want to be in? I've sent out mailers and stuff. I used to do door knocking. I'm not sure if people really do that anymore or not. That's a good thing to do to try to find, people, HOA pages or anything like that. I don't spend a ton of time on the online aspect of it, but who do you know in that neighborhood that already lives there? Or who do your clients know that lives in there that you can just get a foot in the door and get a phone call with? Kind of have your ears on the ground as much as possible. I think goes a long way, especially with low inventory. How do you combat low inventory? You find sellers. Obviously we're talking about buyers here today, but we always want to be on the lookout for houses to go sell. If you have a buyer for that house, that's great, where you can save the seller a ton of time, energy, effort in order to kind of avoid having to go through the process of going on the market. There's a lot of advantages to that too, which we try to somewhat exploit and simplify the process for the seller. Buyer didn't have to quite compete per se on some of those houses too. If we were to double in something or bring a buyer to a seller, we always make the buyer right as if it were competitive. That's the only kind of fair thing to the seller on there too. That's what we try to do is really we'll farm a neighborhood. Try to if you can get any sort of open houses in there. Just get ears to the ground. But trying to find sellers while you're working with your buyers is never a bad thing to do. It's all prospecting.
Yeah, I think a good counter to that as well is, I think a lot of times I made this mistake and agents make the mistake. You have that initial buyer's appointment and the buyer tells you, or the couple tells you, or the family tells you what they're looking for, what their budget is, what the area is, and all that. That staying the same from the original conversation to closing table is rare, believe it or not. You think it's going to be the same, but I would say less than 25%. So 25% of the time it gets pretty close, but sometimes it's different. They're looking at areas they didn't initially consider. They're changing their price point, maybe they're looking at something that maybe needs more work than they originally thought. You know, all those different things, it kind of opens it up. They really want a, you know, a single family home, they end up with a townhouse. You know, I've had people tell me one thing and they buy the absolute opposite of that. So be wary. They're not trying to deceive you. They're just excited about the process and maybe telling you what their dream is. And sometimes they've done the research to know, okay, their dream is accurate. Sometimes they have done nothing, you know, so they're just throwing ideas out there they've seen on TV, so.
Yeah, and so that does change, you know, person to person, client to client, you know, so they start off one way, end up another way. A lot of that, you figure that out by talking to them, checking in. Hey, we haven't seen anything on the market. We need to expand our search out to get you some more results. You know, have you driven around portions of, you know, Chesterfield or Hanover or, you know, King William or wherever they may potentially be looking? If they're not finding stuff either in their price point or in the location, then we either got to probably change either the price point or location. If you want to be in a certain location, you're not seeing any results, well, you probably need to increase your budget. If you can't increase your budget, then we may need to switch the location. So it's constantly being in contact with them and seeing kind of what works and checking in, and just, you know, trying to provide some value to them and bring them some stuff that may be off market, or hey, how about, have you driven through this area? Have you even thought about it? They may not know that they don't like an area. They may not know that they do like an area. You don't really know until you get them out there and shoot them out into the world and let them kind of make those decisions. You know, so I always tell people, I'm not the one who's gonna live in your house. You are. So if this is your decisions where you're comfortable, I'm here to help you make a good informed decision. But in the day, it's your call. And I may need to kind of open their world up or their view up to some different areas they haven't thought about. But that kind of comes with kind of seeing if anything we can find in their exact specific criteria up front works. If it doesn't work, we probably need to expand out, whether that's either price point locations or maybe bedrooms, bathrooms. So we always got to kind of filter and adjust their searches kind of throughout the process, help them get into something. When you get a buyer on the hook, you know, you want them to buy. You don't want the buyer that never does anything, talks about it and never does anything. I always kind of bring that back on to me. I can't go force somebody to be in a house, but if they truly want to buy something and do something, you know, that's what I'm kind of here for, to help kind of guide them to that direction. It may not be what they originally wanted or what they originally thought, but, you know, we get them into a house at some point.
Yeah, I think one of the examples I give, basically what you're speaking of, what Kevin's talking about is, you know, you meet with somebody originally and they're like, oh yeah, we have to have 2 acres or an acre of land, and you guys start asking questions, why, or you need that. Sometimes they know exactly what size lot that is, most of the time they don't. I was like, well, what are you really looking for? You need acres for a certain thing, or are you looking for privacy? Yeah, privacy, that's what we need. So if it's a smaller lot that backs up to common area or woods or an unbuildable area, would that work for you? Oh yeah, that would work for you. And all of a sudden your search of 5 houses in entire central Virginia, now it's 35 houses and you maybe pick or choose. But I think the more questions you ask and the more times you meet with them or get them out there is a good thing. I did not grow up in the Richmond area, so that has some downsides being in real estate, but the good side is I don't have any preconceived notions about anywhere in town. And I think if you approach it that way, that's only gonna serve you and your buyer better, because some people are very much anti this area, anti that area, but if they come at it with a more open mind, they have many more options. And they have, like I said, preconceived notion. It's like, oh yeah, this is areas like that. Well, no, it isn't, or it was 10 years ago, or, you know, things are changing, you know, so don't be scared to ask those questions.
Yeah, and sometimes it's, you know, people are like, oh, I don't want to be in Chesterfield. I grew up in Hanover. I didn't spend a whole lot of time in Chesterfield. And then you get people that I grew up with, they're like, I definitely want to be in Hanover, nowhere else. Then they can't find anything, you know, in Hanover. And then next, you know, their search set for Hanover. Next thing they're gonna pop on Zillow or Realtor or whatever. They're gonna say, hey, I can get the exact house I'm looking for in Midlothian for, you know, $50,000 less than I have to spend in Hanover, and there's inventory there. So it may open them up to it. Like I said, they may not realize that, hey, this is an area that I can make work. They're just not familiar with it. So just kind of shooting them out there and letting them kind of figure that out a little bit for themselves. And they also need to kind of break down some of their barriers as well. Like I said, if their goal is to get into a house, you know, they're gonna have to concede on something. They may concede on a couple things. It may not just be one thing. It may have to be a big thing like location. On that, we want to make sure we're still having some results to put in front of them to help them get into something eventually on there.
And sometimes you have to coach them on pricing as well. People, a lot of times, especially if they haven't even been pre-approved or, you know, really know what their budget is, they just give you, you know, like my parents never bought a house over 300, I'm never buying a house over 300, so they give you that price point and then tell you everything they want with it, cause they just assume they can get that, and a lot of times it's not, and their budget can be more, sometimes it's not, but you need to at least ask those questions. And I think one of the things I've stumbled on over the years is, if someone confidently tells you one thing, you assume, oh yeah, they've really done their research, they know what they're talking about, and sometimes they do, but you have to remember, you're the expert, you do this stuff every day, you look at houses, you're on MLS every day, you're in open houses, you're in, you're showing properties, so we're the experts, you don't want to certainly step on their toes at all, but always keep that in mind. I've seen where if the client leads you, like you're the horse, they're leading you by the reins, rarely goes well.
Yeah, I was having a conversation earlier with the client, just checking in. I've had some kind of fence sitter sort of people who don't have to move, but they've been wanting to move for 2 years. They've seen the houses in their price point 2 years ago are now not the same houses that are in their price point now. So the price point hasn't really changed, the houses have, just because prices have increased that much. So now they're looking at a much sort of lesser house than they originally anticipated, too. So I mean, you gotta kind of shift with that as well. And it comes down, sometimes it's a smart decision to stay where they are. And I want them to move, that's how we get paid. But sometimes you have to look out for the best interest of the client and what's long-term for them. You're gonna build a lifelong relationship advocate for you and your business by treating people right and making sure that you're putting them in a good spot. So that's always something we gotta keep in the back of our minds throughout this whole process too. So it's not just about getting that quick sale, it's making sure that they're happy, and you're not gonna so I'd like to turn around and sell the house again in a year, get paid again. That's always fun and great, but that probably means I didn't do something great on the initial sort of purchase too. So so we can't go force people into their houses, but we can definitely somewhat direct them, or kind of at least readjust their vision of what they originally thought.
And I think sometimes, when there's only one house to see every few weeks, or you don't have that consistent, I think a lot of realtors can get success if you have consistent contact with your client. You're building rapport, they're learning their marketplace. The transaction can go much smoothly if you have consistency. Then boom, you sell them a house and move along. But if it's like you don't show them anything for a month, or a house sells to anyway, you're not meeting up on a regular basis. Another good thing is make sure that they're doing all their homework and all the due diligence. We've got 3 great guys here from town, and we were talking earlier about not only getting someone pre-approved, if we only show them property if they're not pre-approved yet, but getting them, they have a system where they can take their whole loan application and run them through the full process and underwriting and everything. And it's just to be determined on an address of a house you get under contract. All the dirty work has been done. So that's one good way, I think, to keep that relationship moving, keep the process moving along. And it takes the comfort zone, they're more comfortable, they already have the loan figured out. Oh, we got that figured out, we just need to focus on the house and the inspection and negotiating and all this. So you've taken one thing off the table where it's Saturday evening or whatever, and they're trying to figure out the loan and the house, and do we want it, and what's the offer. It's just one more decision off the table. So do you guys want to speak to that program at all, and kind of what the process is, taking from pre-approval to the next step at all?
So we call it, TBD underwrite. It gives you basically, once it's all said and done, 14 days. If you just need a contract for the house, get your inspections done, and we'll get our appraisal done for the loan. Then you can close. So it gets rid of all the extra 15 days in there for your 30-day closing. To kind of knocks it out the window, puts you ahead of some other buyers in that realm of things.
That's something we also gotta always kind of be thinking about, is how can we make our buyer more attractive too, and something like that definitely helps out. And we talk about sellers, talk about staging houses and doing all the touch up and all that sort of stuff. We can also do that on the buyer side too. That way, when we were presenting an offer to a seller, it's, hey, they're already underwritten, they're already ready to go, we can close in 14 days, here's their love letter, here's the clean contract, all the dates the seller wants as far as closing dates, we have everything accurate as far as what appliances stay. The attention to detail, and that's how you make yourselves more attractive and really stand out in a very competitive market. You may be we also gotta take people who may be, an FHA person, how do we get to 5%? If they wanna buy the house by, June, July, let's work our tails off in order to be able to get a 5% down payment, maybe save some more money, work on some credit. Those are things we wanna try to get done to make us, have a better chance of success, too. So we always gotta work on our buyers, not just, listing prep on, with sellers, make our buyers more attractive too, to have a better chance of success.
Are you using the opportunity, like when rates have gone down a little bit each week or however many, and I don't know if it's that true this week, but have you used that as an opportunity to reach out and say, you might wanna use this opportunity?
Yeah, I think it's
to see
always
if you
good
qualify for more?
Yeah, and also too, just, rates have changed. I've had people that have been looking for, 2 years. Well, like I said, I gave the example earlier, their payment has changed drastically based off of interest rates. So it's kinda like, hey, you need to go back and touch base with your lender to see, are you, we've had this sort of set at 450 for 2 years. Well, if at 450 2 years ago, your payment was, $2,300 and now it's $3,100, can you do $3,100, or we need to readjust our search back down to, 375 or 400? So it's always having that kind of constant communication. The lender's a huge part of that too. You wanna make sure that they are fully vetted. Like I said, if they can go through the underwriting process ahead of time, let's go ahead and get that done. That just simplifies the process, when we get to it.
And I think if the rates are just changing a little bit, like they have over the past few months, and as long as the people are up to date on their pre-approval, that's probably one of the last things I'm gonna bring up, unless it's really advantageous at that finite period of time, because that's to me, that's a news blurb, that's rates, that's trying to get this. I'm more focused on what's the big picture here. Do you need to get your kids in school in time? Do you need breathing room for the new baby coming? Do you need, whatever the situation is? And really, that's why somebody should be buying a house, one of those big reasons, and they're gonna be there long term.
Yeah, and people who fight, rate, maybe they're not true serious buyers. It's kinda like, hey, if the stars align, I'm ready to buy, but if the stars don't align, then I'm gonna stay put.
Yeah.
You kinda wanna figure that out a little bit too, to make sure you're spending time with the right people. We don't wanna be running around with people who wanna go see 30 houses in 45 days and then never do anything. The window shoppers of the world, they gotta kinda have that motivation, like Adrian was just saying, rates haven't really affected me or my business a whole lot over the last year, cause people still need to move. People are still having kids, people are still getting married, there's, still deaths, divorces, all that stuff, life still happens regardless of whatever the interest rates are. So that kinda gets put on the back burner, and some people are gonna be more qualified than others, but that can't stop you from doing what you do every day. There's, ways to combat rates, there's 2-to-1 buy downs, there's this, there's that. You can refinance in the future, get where you wanna go. I think Richmond's in a very, interesting spot where we're kind of a mid-tier market where people are leaving big cities. We work with a lot of people who are leaving, from Northern Virginia, they're coming down from Capital One, they're leaving, townhouses and condos and coming out here and building stuff on 1, 5, 10 acres, at the same price, and they're getting 3 times the house and 100 times the yard, on that. Sometimes it's a shock to a lot of people that they go cut their grass when they come from condos and things like that. But yeah, I mean, like, I was, $675 price point, 5 years ago was like, man, that was, one of the bigger houses you ever sell.
Yeah.
Now it's pretty common, and that's, it's almost an average price point for some new construction stuff. And so that's just kind of finding those people and capturing them, and being a trusted resource is how you kind of are able to capture some of those people and know what you're talking about. So the education standpoint on this too, people are looking to you as an advisor. You need to be able to advise them. That's gonna be a million questions from every different sort of direction, so make sure you're well versed on the market stats. I don't need to be a financial guru, we have, people for that. But I need to know enough of it and be able to kind of talk about it knowledgeably to make sure that, I'm the main point of communication on all of this. I tell my clients, hey, I'm the, captain of the ship. Everything kind of, runs through me and all ends with me. But I want you to come to me for everything. I gotta be able to kind of talk about everything, but also know when I need to delegate it out to the more professional person when they get more specific in there. But being able to talk knowledgeably about all of that stuff, makes you look more competent when you're talking with buyers.
I think we're going, to piggyback on that, I think we're going, I've already seen it last year, but we'll see it some this year too. We're going back to more of a seasonal business cycle. We haven't seen that in a long time. So you need to act with that time frame in mind, is my opinion. I think you've got people that got sticker shock by the rates, by the news, the election, the holidays, all that. We haven't seen anything that really affected the market through COVID, because every day seemed the same. So we finally saw that, and now maybe they're more or less got one foot out the door, firing their agent, and bam, that's the perfect time for you to be there and be ready to go, ready to work. Like, people, whether they are able to close on a house or not, they're shopping for a house in the spring market. It's just something about it. The flowers bloom, the weather is 60-some degrees today. It gets people, it's that simple, but the warmer it is, the nicer it is. You know, be ready to go, be ready to hit the ground running, getting new clients and getting them off the ground, because they're probably thinking, hell, we haven't bought a house for many reasons, but they're like, our agent hasn't found us the right house, whatever, and now it's a good time for you guys to come in and with a renewed spirit that you're gonna help them out, so.
Yeah, make sure we're not down in the dumps selling. You don't wanna talk all doom and gloom and then telling people, hey, I don't think you should buy because of, rates or this or that. There's a lot of people who sat out during COVID because, oh, it's too crazy, everything's gonna crash. Well, guess what? They just lost out on however much equity, just everyone else just gained over the last 2-3 years. I think that's a trend that gonna continue to increase. I don't see Richmond really slowing down a whole lot. There's people are coming here, people aren't really leaving here. The area is growing. You're gonna continue to have more and more work from home, because that wasn't really a thing a whole lot, 5 years ago. That's gonna continue to evolve, I think, just the way people communicate and online and that stuff now. The workforce has kind of gone mobile, where it gives people the ability to, work for a company in Alabama and live in Richmond, or be in New York City or DC and have to, commute once a month up there. They're gonna wanna take that, leave in a big city, come down here and get, like I said, 3 times the house and the yard and space, and still be close to, city, beach, DC, mountains. There's a lot of stuff around here, where people are gonna continue to kind of flock to Richmond. That's what I feel about it.
Yeah.
It's growing.
We've always remained strong. Even when the bubble burst, foreclosure crisis, all that good stuff, Richmond market stayed better than average than the rest of the nation. We're lucky we don't have one giant industry that we're relying on. We're pretty mixed up. You mentioned closer to DC, we have the feds here, we have a lot of government stuff going on here, military stuff, so we have a
big time companies.
Yeah, you have a wide variety of stability here, I would say. I was thinking about 2 other things. Maybe if you guys are having challenges with a buyer, throw it up here to us and see how we would basically advise you to handle it. And or I also want to touch on, I lost out this weekend on an offer. I know there are several other people too. Maybe touch on how you position yourself best when you have the buyer to make an offer. How are you gonna get the deal done and get the house for them? You guys do y'all have any challenges right now with certain buyers that you're struggling with that I'm gonna throw up here and see what we would do?
I've got a question.
Mhm.
I've got a buddy who's been looking for a house for probably the last year, and inventory's low. They're having trouble finding houses that they want to buy, but once they have, they've missed out on a couple, and they've actually been through a couple realtors too, because they're getting frustrated.
Yep.
And one of the things he told me recently is they found a house they wanted to put an offer in. They had their price where they thought it should be as far as the offer goes. I don't think they're waiving inspection or appraisal, but he was saying, like, the realtor was telling him that you need to try to be as appealing as possible, and you need to do more. You need to either offer more or put an escalation clause in there or waive this or waive that. And he was telling me, like, why isn't that a realtor making, doing what they can to make me more appealing? Why don't they go from 3% to 2%? That's appealing to somebody selling a house. Instead of having to cough up 6%, they're only coughing up 5%. And that was something that he was, like, expressing frustration to me about. And I don't know how that gets handled around here. I don't even have my license officially yet. I'm just
my incentive's going up on that dude already. I think you got some education for that guy to get him. And sometimes you just have to be blunt with people, like, hey, we're going to war here. It is a battle. Like, it's not fun to buy a house right now. It's not fun to shop for a house. It seems like it on TV sometimes. It's not a fun time, no matter what your budget is. And sometimes just hitting somebody with that, there's no need to sugarcoat it. We're talking about a lot of money here, and to me, it builds a level of trust, like, hey, this is what it is. There's no salesmanship along with it, like, this is a battle, here's what it's probably gonna take to get the job done. It's up to you. You make every final decision here. It's up to you what you're willing to do. But the last house you looked at got 11 offers. The house before that is already closed now. We saw like 32 over asking price, all cash on the sale. The house before that. So I would go back and look at all the ones he's ever looked at.
Yeah.
And in a way, he's gonna compare, oh man, we offered 1,000 over asking price.
Right.
We missed it by 52,
Yeah.
Like, that's the data. You're not the bearer, you're a little bit the bearer of the bad news, but you're not the bad guy. You're just like, this is what happens, it's crazy, and he'll either get with the program or not.
Yeah, I think
And the
about-
strategy too for listing, was sellers were making sure they either priced right at or a little below to get that craziness.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so that was just causing it to be even harder, which.
Yeah, it's
better
better, that's how you
strategy
get
than
those good
overpricing.
contracts, and I had put one on the week, this past weekend in Glen Allen, and we had 20-some showings on it, we had 9 offers, Hayden held an open house on it, we had 3 open houses on it, we had over 40 people or 40 groups through over the 3 days that weren't, with their agents. I mean, there's a lot of competition out there. By you as an agent reducing your commissions, probably not gonna cut the deal if they're not
Right.
waiving the, home inspection or the appraisal. And I tell clients too, like, I don't wanna waive your inspection for you, I don't think it's a good idea to do it.
Right.
But that's also potentially what it takes to get the house. If I'm representing a seller and I have one that's no inspection versus one that's regular inspection, regular appraisal, maybe a better, price point, or maybe a couple $1,000s more, but like, the headache of that, or, if we have an inspection, still, there's gonna be stuff that pops up on the inspection, and then that becomes a headache. And then, then we're gonna end up losing out on that, couple $1,000s difference, because we're gonna have to talk about repairs now. So from a seller standpoint, like, you want the cleanest, simplest, easiest deal you can possibly get.
Right.
And if the buyer is not willing to do that, but another buyer is, well, then that's on the buyer at the end of the day. So we're not the ones writing the check, we're not the ones making the decisions. It's whatever the buyer is, comfortable with, but that does sound like an educational sort of problem
But
that
there's
they have
another, and
on that.
Adrian may remember this, there was this, one of my hardest ones last year to win was one where everyone was waiving inspections. So Adrian's been doing it 20 years and I'm 6 years. I'm like, hey, would you go show the house too, so it's not me again? And meet my buyers here and go, and you look in, remember that, over in Glen Allen? Get in the crawl space, get in the attic, so that we're looking at all the big stuff, so they felt comfortable waiving the inspection.
Yeah, there's a lot, I'll do the same thing too.
Oh, yeah.
There's some houses where you can walk in, it's kinda like, we're getting 2 inspections on this.
Oh,
And
yeah.
there's other ones where it's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
you can walk in, you can tell by the craftsmanship, and that
You
does
can tell.
take a little bit of an eye to figure out, and it takes time to, be able to look at a roof and say, hey, this roof is shot, or this roof's brand new and got plenty of life left in it, or, poking your head in the crawl space, do you have insulation hanging down and flapping around everywhere, is vapor barrier even there? Those are all things that are gonna pop up. You can kind of let them know, hey, this house isn't perfect, it's got X, Y, and Z that you're gonna have to kind of figure out and budget for, but, it's got 11 offers on it, and we're gonna have to, kind of pull all the stops if we wanna get it. And that also finds out your buyer's motivation a little bit too. Once they lose out on a couple,
Yeah.
they get much more motivated. I don't love losing,
Yeah.
but I also don't mind losing from time to time too, because I know that the next time we go out, it's gonna be a better, stronger offer, they're more prepared. And I think it just kinda takes losing sometimes a few to kind of really appreciate what you get, at the end of the day.
I would definitely be meeting with your buddy, and if he's married or in a relationship, that person needs to be there as well. Cause it's 2 people making the decision, and sometimes the most hard-headed person is the one you deal with over and over and over and over. I made mistakes sometimes, first I'm only talking to the man in the relationship, or one side of the relationship. You need to be talking to both. We're certainly talking to both at the house, and then just remind them, saying, hey, the seller's not saying no to your offer, they're saying yes to another offer. Your offer is awesome, y'all did a great job putting it together, there's just other offers ahead of yours that look better. We're just really putting ourselves in the seller's shoes. They're picking this one because of over ours, because of this, and this. Would you do the same?
Right.
Usually they say yeah. So we can't change how many offers a house gets, we can't change the other terms of the offers. We can only tell them what's going on to the best of our knowledge, and then let them decide at the end of the day.
Yeah, a lot of it's communication too, like I said, I try to be the first one in, I try to be the first offer submitted a lot of times, if that's the case, then I'm also staying in contact with that agent, if they're waiting until Sunday and I submit my offer on Friday, I'm calling them on Saturday, hey, how are we still stacking up, do we need to improve our offer, do you have more offers now, since we were the first one, beat everybody to it, remember us, well, here we are. Do we need to add something, do we need to, waive this, do you just get something else that's all cash, how do we, combat that, anything we can do to make ourselves more attractive? Like I said, I ask all those questions continuously. I also want to let the other agent know that, hey, I can communicate. I can make sure that this kind of gets done. I'm not the person who just submits an offer and then, cross my fingers and pray that it comes back as ratified in 2 or 3 days. And just on the listing side, a couple of days ago, we went with an offer that, the communication was really good. They, weren't the 100% best offer. We had a cash one I thought was probably a little bit stronger. And just a little bit cleaner, simpler, and easier, but that was an investor. My people wanted to sell the house to someone who was going to be living there, wanted a nice family to go in there. So those are questions you can still kind of reach out, ask. I'm a big fan of the love letters too, and that we had 9 offers. One of them had a love letter. The love letter one is the one that got it. I mean, it's simple little things. Like I said, we want to pull out all the stops. And if you're not doing that, then that's when you're kind of doing your client a disservice, in my opinion. Like I said, there's ways to win out there. You gotta be involved, you gotta communicate, and it really kind of never ends. You gotta have that perpetual attitude of, I tell every single buyer I meet with right now, you're gonna lose 5, 6, 7 houses. Bam, I slap them right in the face day one.
Why not?
Because guys, what, man, it takes that sting away when you have to call them and say, they write that first offer where they're, going $5,000 above, and they're, $5,000 appraisal gap,
Calling the
and,
preacher.
yeah, so they feel great about it, and then, yeah, that one went 45 grand over, everything was waived, and, getting feedback on that too, like, call up after you lose, and be like, how do we lose? We were, good offer, not like a combative way, but it's, hey, how do we lose? Where were our shortfalls? Was it price? We were, 10% down conventional. Were all your offers 20% down conventional, or were they cash, or were the people waiving things? That's all good information to relay back to your buyers. It's kind of flipped now, where you used to have to give the seller a bunch of feedback. Hey, how's the house? Well, I thought the carpet was, atrocious, and it was awful, and it smelled like dog piss. Those are things sellers used to worry about. Now we're getting back to where everything's going to be kind of, waived, and it doesn't matter as much. You got to get your buyer feedback. That's how also you talk about buyers, saying it's the agent's fault. Probably not the agent's fault. It's probably, you got to do more. But if they don't know that, they're going to blame the agent.
Now I would say too, a lot of times it's setting expectations. You want to get that feedback for that too. You go show 2 houses over the weekend. It's their first couple times out. They're like, this is horrible. This is definitely not going to work. And they're approved for $300 and it's $299. So I don't let that just go. I follow up Tuesday and I say, hey, the house is, I'm not saying it like this, the house wasn't good enough for you, or you didn't think it was good enough. Now it actually got 10 offers on it and sold immediately or whatever. So it lets them know, okay, this is the market I'm shopping in, without you having to say, no, you're wrong. You're just giving them real data, real feedback, and hopefully they can handle it and take it.
Yeah, another thing to that example too, if you have a buyer that's pre-qualified 300 and looking at 299s, you need to have that conversation with them of, hey, this is at 299, but it's got 10 offers on it and it just sold for 350.
Unless it's 14 days on market.
Yeah, unless something like that where it's been on for a little bit, you have an opportunity to kind of negotiate some, but a lot of times you got to really set expectations with them. It's okay to take them out and go look at a 300. We don't want to go, if their hard cap is 300, we do not want to show them anything above that. Even if it's been on for 2 weeks and it's been on at 315. Nah, I mean, that's still not quite there. And those are things you want to try to find out from your clients on it. You got to educate them on, we probably need to set our expectations more of the, we got to look at houses more 275. Especially if they're good and turnkey and they're going, I call them like, the HGTV houses, and I can't stand HGTV, but those nice little pretty houses are all decorated, cute. I mean, they just get a bunch of offers on them, and they do. And it's gonna go way up and above. You need to kind of let your clients know that way you're not, you can kind of rip their hearts out ahead of time. A little bit, but it does save you time, energy, effort, and it does save them time, energy, effort, and probably a little bit more heartbreak.
And if you get people on board with you, they'll volunteer up, be like, hey, this one looks really good, it's gonna go way over, right? And you say, yeah, be like, all right, let's skip that one, we can't, we know what our budget is, it's less of the pipe dream and more the reality. Sometimes reality is tough, but we're dealing with grown-ups and hopefully they can handle it, so, yeah. I think you know, it goes without saying with buyer, you wanna be as professional as you can. Most real estate agents are not very professional, you know, so you wanna look the part, be the part, have, I'm bad with this, have your car clean, you know, whatever it is, show up in a professional manner. Do some research on the house before you look at it, do some research on the neighborhood, see what's under contract already. You're the one to knowledge, cause they're gonna ask those questions if you're there. I always bring my iPad on my showings so I can look things up right now, cause I call them throwaway questions. Buyers get in, they love the house, and they just start asking things just because they're nervous. They wanna feel like they're doing their due diligence. If I can answer all those things, we're that much closer to them making a decision. You wanna come across professional when dealing with the listing agent. The two kind of listing agents that kind of fit the majority of the time. One, they're lazy and they don't mind you doing most of the work. If you show you're professional and you know what's going on, boom, they'll let you do it. Then the other is they're super busy, they're selling a bunch of houses, and the more they know you know what they're doing, the more houses they can sell. So you're trying to figure out who that is, but you're still the same person. You're getting the job done, your buyers are gonna get, the house is gonna be closed, the least headaches possible, because you know what you're doing, and the buyer knows what they're doing, and your lender knows what they're doing, you know, your inspector knows what they're doing. Everybody, this is a foregone conclusion. As soon as you sign my offer, this thing's going to closing, you know.
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna see a lot of houses, you've seen it already, especially with rates kind of going up, where people will get cold feet and leave, and jump on out of a house that they, you know, loved a week ago, and now because of, you know, an inspection item or something like that, they're freaked out about it. You know, buying a used house, a lot of times too, so I use the analogy of a used car. There's dings, dents, leaks, issues, problems. Like I said, it's not going to be perfect. If you want that perfect house, it's not out there. And letting them know that too. Like, hey, you know, the HVAC is old. You know, well, guess what? You know, the roof is new and the siding's been replaced, and you know, the window's been replaced. But you know, if we got to replace, you know, HVAC and a hot water heater in a few years, that's home ownership. Kind of get used to. Don't let something small or something old blow up a deal. You know, the disadvantage of that right now is you go back on the market, you're back at square one. Now you're back in, you know, 10 offers. Now you have to write, you may have had a house under contract where you could negotiate some of that stuff a little bit. Now you have to go write one where you have to waive the inspection completely. You can't even check out how old this or that is, or, you know, if we got foundation issues or things like that. So just also when you get one, you know, in hand, we want to do what we can to try to do our best to keep it together or find a way. And a lot of that comes from communicating with agents. Like, hey, this is kind of my buyer, and I've negotiated, you know, as is addendum. We're not supposed to ask for anything. I just got one where it's an as is addendum. We just got $5,000 off because the roof was completely shot, and they don't want to go back to market. If they give up, you know, $5,000, they're done in 2 weeks, versus them having to go back to, you know, that. So, but that's a lot of hand holding with the buyer. That's a lot of education on it too. The house was built in 1941. There's going to be issues with it. Kind of get over it a little bit and say, if you want the house, this is the area you want to be in, the school district you want to be in, and this is the house and you're under contract on it. You know, we may make a few sacrifices along the way. It may, you know, stink, or maybe a short-term deal to have to replace some of that sort of stuff, but at that point, you're just improving your own house. It's your house. So try to hold deals together as well. And that comes a lot of times, you just got nervous buyers. Talking them through that, and what are their main concerns, how do we combat those main concerns. You know, we had that one with HVAC. There's a 2009 unit and a 2006 unit. We'll find out that they're straight ACs, and that's not that bad to replace rather than a heat pump. But kind of getting some of those questions answered, having you know, trusted partners who can help out, and you can shoot a picture of a system to an HVAC guy, or take a picture of a foundation wall that's got a crack in it and send it to a structural person. Having those people you can kind of reach out to, that saves you a lot of time, hassle, headache as well. Just having good contractors is always a good thing.
You can't be talking to your buyers too much, especially during the process or making the offer. But when you're under contract too, sometimes you're like, gosh, I've been all over town, I've been all over creation, like, you don't wanna let your foot off the gas at that point. This is the buyers maybe freaking out, they may be asking everybody they ever know what their opinion was, and they need to be hearing from you and listening to you, and you say, oh yeah, that's a valid concern, or here's what we're gonna do about this, whatever it may be, you know, certainly be in contact with them the whole time. In my experience, when houses come back on the market, majority of the time, it's a person problem, not a house problem. So most of the time, there's not a lot or anything wrong with the house. It's cold feet situations, whatever. I'm trying to, if my buyer either lost out on it, or was thinking about it, or it's a fit for them, I wanna be the first one in the door on that one, you know, especially in a hectic market like this, and let them know, like, we've looked at every top to bottom, there's nothing wrong with the house. They told us other people got cold feet or couldn't get the loan or whatever it was, like, this is good, you know, and it gives them a little bit of breathing room on a Tuesday versus Saturday night or whatever it might be, you know.
Do you guys ever recommend like a home buyer's warranty when you sell?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Especially-
yeah, I mean-
Especially in those situations where it's the
Get away with
HVAC is
everything.
older, or,
Right.
you know, it's operational still, but yeah, it's always a good
Probably
idea.
like $500 or something.
Yeah, if you get the whole house when it's $500-600,
Yeah.
I've gotten warranties, Dominion Power sells them, through another company, I can't remember which company, but you can actually get them just for plumbing or just for HVAC. It's $10 a month, you know, so I have those on all our properties, just to have, you know,
Really the first time.
water line, drain line.
I mean, first time.
Yeah, you can always redo those as well, so it's kinda like a little mini insurance policy on that, so that's how you can combat that a little bit, just always let buyers know that warranties aren't 100% gonna cover everything every single time. So that there's, you know, I have some horror stories about, home warranties, but I also have success stories too, so I mean, there's times where there's been a $10,000 system replaced with no questions asked. There's other times it's been absolutely pulling teeth to get the contractor, out there that the home warranty company has assigned who's not worth a darn,
That's
on
case
there.
by case.
Yeah, so I mean.
Which company do you like?
I've had good success with, you know, Katie Richards, I think does she get out, or, she's at Cinch, yeah, it used to be
Yeah, okay.
HMS, on that, I think, you know, so, but yeah,
They're our partner, right?
they're still a good thing to just throw out there and you can say, hey, this should, you know, help you at least sleep at night knowing that this is, you know, should be covered. So, same time with those, if the home inspection says get the HVAC serviced, cause the home warranty company's gonna ask for a copy a lot of times of the inspection report from when they bought the house, make sure you get it serviced, or else they're not gonna, you know, hold up that warranty portion of it, so, still do that maintenance stuff up front that, you know, they kinda tell you to do in the, home inspection. Did you have a question?
Well, I was gonna ask that very question. Do some of those home warranty companies require home inspection? And in this case, you know, in this market, if you're not getting one,
Mm-hmm.
is the buyer getting one just for informational purposes to submit with
No, in general, and I've never had them ask for a report
Okay.
before.
Yeah, I've had it happen a couple times where they'll, you know, reach out and be like, hey, here's your claim, you just bought it 6 weeks ago, did you get it inspected, did you have it checked out? And sometimes we're talking to the buyer, and the buyer's like, oh yeah, I got it, and here it is, and they're like, well, here you go, cause that's the way that they try to, you know, it's insurance, they're gonna try to wiggle the way out of it, they don't wanna pay out, on that, so you can't give them the ammo to have them. pay
Basically,
out
when you
either.
buy or sign off on a warranty, you're making the pledge that everything's operating how you think it should be operating, so that's all the warranty company needs, you know? If you can prove, hey, at inspection, it was working then or not working then or whatever, then there you go. So, did you have another question?
You know, I've actually gotta go, I've got a dentist appointment in Rutland at 3 o'clock.
Yeah,
I wanna
no
thank
worries.
you guys for your time.
Absolutely.
Alright. What else you got?
Yeah, y'all have any challenges, any buyer challenges?
Well, I would just, comment that when you guys experience those frustrations or fears or, you know, things that you can see in the buyer, let us know. Because we may be seeing them too, or we may see additional fears and might be able to relate back to you to say, hey, they're really scared about this.
Yeah.
Any information we can share is.
Y'all hear that? Just go freaking coffee.
But that's a
Everyone in the
great.
class heard it too, online for the next 100
Yeah.
years. Yeah, it's all right, you know. I've bit my tongue a few times though, you just have cursed a lot more than this, so, yeah.
Yeah.
On video
But that's,
today.
I mean, your communication is great. I mean, between you and your buyer, all interested parties, you, the buyer, the inspector, the loan officer, their parents, their godparents, you know, their contractor buddy, their
In-laws,
kids.
cousins
yeah.
in California who's in real estate,
Yeah.
yeah.
So Will and
Yeah,
I
you
just
show
finished-
everybody the respect, anybody that is important to them is obviously important to you. If they're gonna be part of the decision-making process, then they should be important to you
The
too.
one Will and I just finished, we had parents, the buyer, me, and Will was in constant, I mean, she would get worried, first time home buyer, we've been working together 2 years to get her ready. And he just did a great job helping also, you know, I talk to her all the time, but helping her with the lending side and not being nervous and
Yep.
did a great job.
Yeah, all that stuff
It can make all the
matters.
difference in the world having a good lender,
Mhm.
that's for sure.
And I think too, like when I know Kevin's done the same, we've talked about this before and actually discussed it in this same program. When we show a house and the client doesn't like it, you carve time out of usually your evening and usually your weekend, right? So you don't go to a house, oh, it doesn't work for us. That's great, you're not gonna sell them that house, but this is a journey, this is an educational process. What can I teach them about this house, this neighborhood, this HVAC system, the state of the market, anything throughout the process? When we look at it, that's gonna make the next one, the one they do love, that much more easier process throughout. I wanna, you know, I'm still looking at the crawl space, I'm still looking around. I know Kevin loves the siding thing, he's noting the siding on it, you know, all those things along the way. So if you take your time out, and sometimes they wanna bounce in and bounce out, other times they wanna linger, whatever it is, you set the appointment, you need to be advancing the ball.
Mhm. Yeah, a lot of that too is they don't like the house, why?
Absolutely.
What don't you like
Of course.
about it? It checks off your bedrooms, bathrooms, location, cause that's what we have your search and everything set up for. It checks off all the other boxes, so it was sent to you, what do you not like about it? Cause
The
you'll
trim
find
is
out some.
stained.
Yeah,
Stained
so
trim.
you can find out some like really dumb, like simple fixes, they'll be like, well, I don't like this about it, I'm like, well, that's $150 fix, are you gonna make that decision, you don't like the, you know, paint
Yeah.
color of the dormers is,
It's a
you know,
vision.
yellow, you know, you can paint that, you don't like the color of the bedrooms, you know, hey, well, guess what, that could turn off a lot of people, but paint can be
Yeah.
changed, it can be fixed.
And then you tell a story
Um,
about
mhm.
you and your wife painted and, you know, whatever, your first house and this, that, and you're kinda telling them like, you can paint too, like, I did it, I'm not asking you to do something, I'm not, it's like,
Yeah.
you're softly telling them like, oh yeah, you know, paint this, paint that, it'll go a long way.
Mhm.
Get your buddies, you know, 6-pack of beer, pizza, and, you know, knock it out, that's the
Get
interior.
time.
I don't trust my buddies painting, so,
Yeah.
I'll hire that one out,
Yeah.
so, yeah, what else you guys have?
So you said you lost one this past weekend or whatever, just get outbid.
We got outbid, I was trying to get more information on it, we went quite a bit over asking price. We waived, well, we should've brought this up earlier, so we didn't waive the inspection entirely, we waived a lump sum. Anything found up until X amount, or each individual item, that's always a good way to do it. That way they're still covered, they have an inspection, but still you're telling the seller like, hey, we're not gonna nickel and dime you, we're going through this, we're buying the house. But, Suzanne helped me do a market analysis on that, it was very clear that the agent underpriced the house significantly. Yeah, like $25,000-$30,000, it was $395, it should've been $425 easily, and it probably would've gone up higher than that, you know, so they missed the boat. So even though we made a aggressive offer on it, really where the market should've pushed it higher, than I wasn't surprised that we lost out on that one, so.
How many did they end up with on that one?
I think 11, something like that, so.
I had one this weekend too, that was, they had
We
one,
were cash
and I
too.
thought it was a high price.
Yeah, that's another thing too, is kinda doing your research on these houses too, if it gets competitive, you know, pull up stats for that school district or that neighborhood and kinda say, hey, on average, these ones have sold for $35,000 over list price. That way you kinda have an idea of what to kind of set expectations with for your buyer. So I kinda gave feedback to all the, losing agents on the one I just listed, this past weekend. I was kinda gave a breakdown of prices, you know, so we're listed 365, we had one in the 360s, we had, one in the 370s, two in the 380s, then I think we had 4 in the 390s, and then 2 that, got above 4. I got it, I had one of the agents reach out before I sent down the feedback, they were 380 all cash, and he was just like, well, we're not good enough, and I was like, yeah, you finished in 8th place.
Wow.
Out of 9, but it's kinda like, they didn't, they thought that was a, slam dunk cash, 15 grand over list price, didn't even sniff it.
Yeah.
So, agents are also more transparent, some are more transparent than others. If you call me and ask me kind of what you need to get it done, I'm gonna let you kind of know. I can't tell you the exact specifics, but I'm gonna let you know, like, hey, your offer needs a lot of work, you're way off, you gotta, I need, if you wanna compete, you need to have language regarding the inspection, or maybe no language regarding the inspection at all.
Some realtors think that needs to be secretive, there's nothing, you need to be on the same page as your seller, that's all it needs to be.
Right.
Yep,
If
so,
you end up getting your seller a higher, better offer, you're doing a great job.
Yeah, so they don't really care how you do it, they want the best deal for them. If I can be a little more transparent with the buyer's agents and make those 9 people jockey, of the 4 top offers, none of them came in above 400, but they got up there because I told them, hey, you need to step your game up, because this one's got this, and then next thing you know, the offers don't always have everything perfect on them. I had one that waived inspection that had no appraisal language. They were, 10% down. I was like, hey, you're gonna need to add an appraisal language in here, and then, I can, take that, like, hey, you gotta bump it up higher because someone's beating you on that. And now their offer just got, locked tight, and now my seller is just like, I don't have to do anything left. This is a, rock solid deal. There's nothing left to be done, because I just pin those people against each other. Similar to how, your buyers once you get multiple offers, you can really, kind of hold their feet to the fire and kind of somewhat make them write a really good, clean offer. That's just what it takes to get houses right now too. You gotta be able to separate yourself from the next closest ones. If that's, waiving an inspection, or if that's waiving an appraisal, or figuring out something creative too. I've had people write in there where I'll offer to pay for the termite inspection. It's $100. You're talking about a $400,000 transaction, don't be worried about $100. Offer to, take that off the seller's plate. Offer to pay for the well and septic, if it's a well and septic house, it's at $600 at the end of the day. Not the end of the world when you're buying a $400,000 or $500,000 house. That takes it off the seller's plate. If you're at a very even competitive sort of offers on it, doing something little and simple as that separates you from somebody else. Yeah, termite, well, septic,
That's
take
the
whatever
dumbest
off
thing
the, and I had one this weekend where they're gonna pay the grantor's tax, which is like, a couple hundred, bucks or whatever. Yeah, so it's just something that takes it off the seller's plate. So it's whatever you can do to pull out all the stops.
I lost one early on in my days because I didn't agree to pay for termite. The agent said, well, your offer was the same and our financing was better, but you didn't offer to pay for the termite. I said, the termite inspection is $50.
Yeah.
Like, are you kidding me? She had no idea.
It's a psychological thing, yeah.
Well,
Sometimes
the
they just don't,
agent didn't know either.
Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh.
That's where you,
So that's when I started offering to pay for it on every offer.
Yeah.
Good.
Well, it's not, it's just another little perk. Say, hey, this one's, here's all the highlights of this offer, and they're offering to pay for the termite inspection. Woo! But when they were reviewing 7 offers, you're the only one that, said, hey, I'll pay for the termite inspection, and it's like, all right, well, this checks off X, Y, and Z. It's a clean contract. I try to put everything in one PDF. I don't email a contract with 7 different attachments. That way you can pull everything up. It's one PDF. You can scroll through and see everything without losing papers and this and that. It just becomes too much, especially when you're reviewing, 5, 10, 15 offers on a house. Who presented a clean offer, who reached out, who communicated, who called me, and who just forwarded me a Authentisign thing without, I have to click a link and download it and this and that. It's like, they get kind of on my shit list pretty early on. If they're just forwarding over that, and I also never receive a phone call from them. And also when you forward an Authentisign email, it usually doesn't come from their email address. It comes from like, do not respond at transaction desk.
Yeah.
Don't have your email to even tell you lost the house because you were $40,000 off. Gotta track you down somewhere. I got no contact information for you.
It's like extra work.
Happens every time.
I mean, that's, you want to make the job for the listing agent as easy as it could possibly be. That's part of, that's kind of what we were hitting at earlier, like, you do majority of the work. Yeah, you wanna be competent and easy to get along with and all those things.
Lovable.
I haven't done anything crazy lately, but I had a buyer was an orthodontist. offered orthodontic work to the children of the seller.
Oh,
I've
wow.
had,
Wow.
VR, rental properties offered for a week in Beach House. A big farm was chopped off like some acreage in a house. And, I knew that guy had all the money in the world, but I saw the cows out there and I was like, look, this is what we need to do. We need to offer 2 years free grazing on your back acreage back here to get into it. So you have to think outside of the box, and even if you lose, they're damn sure gonna talk about your offer at the table, you know, so, or you get that final call back, like, the sellers loved everything about it, whether it's your love letter, pictures in your love letter, whatever it might be, they wanna give y'all wanna match this, the house is yours, this is great, you know, so little things like that, or sometimes big things like that can move the needle one way or another, so.
Pulled all the stops. I mean,
Yeah.
real seriously, I mean, it's like I said, at the end of the day, if this is the house you want, what are you going to do to get into it? By letting
Rent
cows
back.
eat your grass for 2 years, that gets you in the house, that's great, you know? It's finding creative ways to win at the end of the day, and a lot of that comes from communication with the agents, finding out, hey, where the seller is going, do they need rent backs, do they, need anything else, do they have kids that need orthodontic work, or their teeth all jacked up, we may need to,
And sometimes it's
may not
like,
wanna agree to that,
you're so hyper focused on your buyer, you forget about the seller, and really every time it's like, who is the seller? What are they, I mean, a lot of times you can't figure that out, but in some cases you can figure that out, Google would be a good friend too, so.
I get lost on that.
What do you do, like, how have you made yourself more knowledgeable about, like, going into a house and looking at HVAC, roof, that's a little intimidating to me to know,
Sure.
like, I'm not an expert in
Oh,
all of those
neither.
things,
And
and you
don't
don't
claim to
have
be.
to be,
Yeah.
right, and they don't claim to be, but how do you differentiate between, I know you can look at the age of the HVAC and.
Yeah, to me, a lot of it's just being on inspections and kind of, so it's just kind of have an idea, like I can point out an electric hot water heater versus a gas hot water heater, based off if there's a flue pipe or not. Gas ones need to have gas to be vented outside, electric ones don't. So just be able to point out, that's electric, that's gas, that's, a dimensional roof, that's a 3-tab roof. These are all just kind of, common things you just pick up over time. You can also, often get asked to go shadow a home inspector or another agent in the office as a home inspection. Hey, can I tag along and kind of see what it's all about, and just, reviewing inspection reports, what does it cost to replace a split girder in a crawl space on average? The more you see those numbers, the more you kind of spout them out, and then that way you can talk a little bit knowledgeably about it without, I'm not a contractor. I'm handy enough where I can do some things on my own, but if you're paying for somebody, you probably want to double the cost you think it is. All that, just set expectations right on it, but a lot of it's just kind of being, it does come with, time, experience, but also you gotta be proactive with it. If you're not, you're not going on home inspections, you're not selling 30, 40 houses a year, tag along. I mean, there's still a lot of free time in real estate, for a lot of agents, on there, which say, hey, you can find time to get better during the week. I always treated this job like a 9 to 5 when I first started. I didn't have anything to do from 9 to 5 a lot of days, but I showed up here, I would hear conversations in the office, I'd have agents be like, hey, you wanna go, I don't love sitting at home inspections. Hayden sat on a couple of them me before where I got other things I need to be doing. I can't go dedicate 2-3 hours to, being there. I'll get the report, I know what I'm looking at, I don't have to be there. So maybe offering to, hey, who's got a home inspection this week they don't wanna go to? And that way you can kind of be there for them. I like to be there at the end to kind of recap it with them, just to make sure I am on the same page and talk to the inspectors and know that, hey, this isn't a giant deal. It may look like a big red marker on the inspection, but pretty common, this stuff we encounter all the time. The house isn't falling down. We can see foundation issues where it'll be like a hairline crack in a wall.
Yeah.
Well, the house has been there since 1940, not going anywhere either. So is it something to be that concerned about, or is the wall buckling and bowing and we got cracks everywhere you can stick your fist through? That's a little bit different. But some of those things are kind of coaching through buyers. Hey, like if you're buying a used house, there's gonna be used stuff with it. Not everything's brand new on this, and even new construction stuff, there's still issues that need to be touched up and taken care of.
It's figuring out your showing style too. Like I'm not open the door, this is the dining room, you know, everybody
Yeah.
can figure that out,
Yeah.
you know, that's
Yeah.
TV.
Uh-huh.
But I am sticking my head in the crawl space, like Suzanne
Yeah.
said, looking at those major mechanicals, and that's, to Kevin's point, it's the perfect time to talk to your home inspector. If he wants your business in the future, they should at least take time out to explain a handful of things to you. Hey, where's the plate on this water heater so I can figure out the date of it, you know? Oh, it's a GE water heater, go to the GE website. Oh, the serial number, it was made September 2009, you know, so you can kind of figure out those things, with a
I
little
think you
bit
should
of due
get Mike
diligence.
to go, when he's showing houses, let you shadow him.
Yeah.
I don't know how many days when I started, you probably went out with me 2 or 3 different days.
That'd be hairy.
I'm kidding.
Yeah.
Well, he would help me with how to look at those things while I was with my buyer, like when I was new.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
You went with.
Cause I wanna find as many things that are not only right with the house, I wanna find as many wrong things I can see from
Yeah.
the get-go, cause a buyer, you're just gonna brush over things. I'd rather, they see them today, it's not nearly as big a deal if they see them after they're under contract or during the inspection. I wanna list out all those things where they're the ones making the decision.
Right.
I wanna give them as much information that I see. Now, if I don't know, certainly gonna tell them I don't know before I'll get back to them.
Mhm.
And same thing when they ask you like, what do you think about the price? What do you think? If I'm not completely confident from my research beforehand and what I've seen while I was there, I would say, let me look into it, let me do a little bit more research and get back to you. And they're completely fine with that, and I made a mistake where, oh yeah, 10 over is definitely gonna get this house, that's what it's to be, or this priced right, or whatever. And then it's hard to walk that back. It's
Right.
much better just to, you know, let me dig in a little bit more on it, you know. Or sometimes people will ask as you're opening the front door, it's like, let me look around a little bit first, and then they're appreciative of that. Cause a lot of times they have some number in their head, and they want to see if it matches real quick before you've even looked
Before
at
you
it.
go through it.
Yeah, I mean, I try to get there too, 10-15 minutes
Yeah.
early,
Mhm.
especially if there's no showing ahead of me, that way I can do a lap, either around the outside or through the house to kind of see what I can see that's wrong. A lot of times it's not really what's right, you know, what's right is, you know, that's what the buyer likes about
Yeah,
it.
they'll see that.
I wanna point out all the stuff that they probably aren't gonna like, or it's gonna pop up on inspection, that way they're not surprised by it. On there, I can get a feel for it. Now, I've also looked at comps already ahead of time. For most cases, not every single time, but I have a pretty good idea of, hey, this is really like very similar to the house that sold $50,000 over. And it's priced where it needs to be, and this is kind of what you need to expect. We wanna make sure there's no giant red flag, any giant issues that we can point out just from being there. And also, I like telling people no, on houses. Like I said, if they you walk in, it's a giant, you know, dump, or it's got a, you know, it may look like HGTV, but the cabinets are hung crooked and all the stuff that, you know, I'm used to walking and seeing houses every single day. Where I can point out like, hey, that was done really shoddy, that looks like crap. If it's got this, and this wrong and cheap and not done right, then God knows what they did with the big projects. And it's kinda like, hey, this is one you probably shouldn't get too excited about, and let them know that too, and that also just builds the rapport with them, cause they said, you're not just someone trying to, hey, you gotta buy this house, it's great, it's pretty, but you know, it's got, you know, the piece of trim's got 14 cuts in it, it's all the scraps. So those are little tiny things that, you know, I look for to make sure we're not, cause I don't want my client to go spend $500 on a home inspection, get excited, waste 2 weeks, go through the loan
Oh, yeah.
process, all that, and then have to, you know, kind of stab them in the heart and say, hey, we're back out, you know, on the street looking again, and stuff, it's, especially with stuff that I could point out myself. That's when I really kick myself, because now not just my client wasted $500, but now I've wasted, you know, getting the contract out, I've sent it to attorneys, the lender's working hard on it, and then, you know, the giant issue that, you know, we knew was there, but, you know, told them it wasn't a big deal, well, now it's a big deal, and now you have to start all over again. So, pointing that stuff out up front.
And it's funny psychologically, if I'm showing someone a house, they're excited about it, it's their first time in there, and you show them the faucet's dripping, they're gonna come back to you, oh, my dad could easily fix that, he fixed our faucet at home. If you don't bring it up then, it comes on the home inspection, now it's like, the seller better fix that faucet. The same issue, perspective is completely different.
Yeah, I always like asking, like, so we always have a buyer meeting in the office before we ever take anybody out to go look at a house. And that's why I get to go over, and I'm like, hey, how handy are you? Do we need to buy the HGTV house that's already done? Or are you okay with the house that's got wallpaper in the kitchen from 1950?
How's your
you
dad?
know, Yeah, do you have anybody that's handy, you know, do you have a, you know, cousin that's electrician, plumber, HVAC person? I use that to my advantage every single time, because, you know, that saves them a bunch of money, they have a trusted person, then go out there and get that taken care of, well, hey, oh, that's not a big deal, my uncle can handle that. now it's a kind of a non-issue, we can move on to some of the other things to focus on that we need to kind of either combat or objection handle or whatever it may be. But kind of knowing what their capabilities are is important too.
Will, Jim?
I was gonna kind of touch on your point of inspection and stuff, so we have to order an appraisal most of the time as a vendor as well. So we always look at those and we can go through and give you a little bit of our knowledge as to what the appraiser's gonna ding the house for. Or if, for example, FHA is hard on railings and chip paint, and it's gonna come back every time. So just little things like that, if you do have questions and say your inspector is iffy on it himself, and we'll know a little bit more if it's gonna come back on the appraiser or not. You're more than happy to give your lender a call. Most of us would be more than happy to, answer any of those questions as well.
And trying to make sure, and they'll usually, like, Will made sure not to order the appraisal until we knew we were gonna get through the inspection period, because this
Another
last one
charge.
had a lot of stuff. We had to get a new roof, we had a lot.
Basically, all the homework right now is on the buyer, just because there's, demand is there and there's very little supply. So you have to do all your homework up front on getting your loan, making sure the house qualifies for the loan, as they were just talking about. You have to do all those things up front. Now, it was a market where they found 5 houses every weekend that they love, and they're just finding the best deal and the best one, different ballgame, then it's a lot more onus on the seller.
Well, this one was
at that point.
FHA, and my buyer agreed to do all the repairs that were required by the loan, which was, that's not normal. Usually the seller ends up having to do it.
Yeah, usually lender doesn't like to hear that either, so.
What's that?
The lender doesn't wanna hear that.
Oh, yeah. Well, as long as it got done, they were
Yeah,
expecting.
yeah, so, like I said,
The
as long as I
seller
don't
was
pay any
like-
money for it or anything like that, but like, I've personally gone out and picked up paint chips out of mulch beds because
Me too.
FHA said, we gotta do this, I've scraped and sanded windows,
I finally had to spray
um,
mulch to cover it.
Yeah, so, sometimes you use your foot. Some are bigger than others, and
Bags
some
of mulch
appraisers
go
are
a
different
long
too,
way.
so, but, being willing to try to do whatever you can to make a deal kind of get to closing. I've I saw a picture on Facebook from 9 years ago where I was on a Saturday morning with a hairdryer from CVS thawing out frozen pipes from a seller who had moved out of a house, and pipe burst and flooded the whole house. A week before closing, and then that, all right, how are we gonna figure this out, make it right? The buyer could have just said, hey, I'm hightailing out of here, I'm not dealing with all that, but, get on the phone, be transparent, let them know what happened. Issues happen, things pop up, how are we gonna, try to hold everything together? Also let people to know that, the listing side, it's not an opponent. We're essentially kind of teammates in
Yeah.
this. They have a seller who wants to sell it, we have a buyer who wants to buy. How are we all gonna come to an agreement to make sure everyone's protected and educated enough to, feel comfortable moving forward, at the end of the day, but don't look at it as a fight and, a pissing match, or I'm gonna, stick it to them. If you stick it to them, you're really just sticking it to yourself, at the end of the day.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah, you wanna position yourself where you're adding value. Whether you're a client that's never ever gonna fire you, you need to be a good, valuable source for them, or a brand new client coming in. That's where I like to look around and make the house the focus and not the person. So they say, oh, this guy really knows his way around the house, the neighborhood, or whatever. You're adding value to them because they've been given other sales pitches from other people before. So when you include them, but also focus on your knowledge and how you're gonna be able to help them, you have a better shot at landing them as a new buyer.
I make my clients drive around a bunch too. Once I get them set up on the search, it's kind of like, hey, here's the areas you said that you want to be in. Here's all the houses that match your stuff. Go through now, categorize all 30 matches you have by doing the thumbs down or the heart. Now all the ones you hearted, now go drive by. You're gonna drive by some and just be like, oh, this neighborhood isn't what I thought it was, or the house looks great, but the neighbor's a junkyard. Those are things we want to try to avoid. We also, as a buyer, we want to think like sellers. I want to try to avoid the houses that back up to, interstates, or the one that's right next to the fire station. There's gonna be a fire truck coming out every, hour of the night, things like that. Do you wanna back up to apartment complexes? That's all sort of things you wanna try to look at. Is backing up to main road, busy road, is that gonna be more difficult to sell in the future? So still wanna think like a seller in that too.
Yeah, the obviously internet, Google Street View, if they won't drive by it, or they don't have time, or whatever. I had one recently, I was like, man, I think I know that area. And I started on Street View, and literally it was a junkyard, like the house next door was a junkyard, and I was like, guys, this is a no. and they're flying various flags and everything else. I was like, this is a no, here's why. And they're like, oh, thank you so much. And I sent them the screenshot, and they're like, oh my gosh, man, you know, whatever, you know, so it's your time and their time too, you know, and
Yes.
you're on the same page. So. Anybody have any other questions?
Thank you.
I know, you guys are great, thank you.
Very good.
Alright, well, that concludes our, home buyer talk today. Thank you everyone for joining, the millions of
Yeah.
watchers out there, really appreciate you tuning in, and we'll catch you at the next one.
Talk to your town first loan officer, make sure you're dialed in.
Thank you.
Thank you for closing.
Thank you.
Alright. Get the silver card?
Like that? Take you one. Great.